And Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, who were the Columbine shooters, they had a plan, an initial plan to incinerate their classmates. And there was these like propane tanks that were wrapped with pipe bombs. And they intentionally wanted to set off these IEDs, these destructive devices, and firebomb, their students and their peers, their classmates in the cafeteria. Like that didn't go off as according to plan. But when I walk through the cafeteria, I see these IEDs, these homemade explosive devices. The cafeteria was covered with backpacks. It was, these kids were like shucking off their book bags. And I could only imagine the terror that they were experiencing with what was going on and how fast it was breaking bad and how unprepared they were and how fearful they had to be, like not knowing what to do or how to do it to escape that, to get out of that. And then we took evidence of that crime scene. We took pictures of that crime scene. We took them back to the Hells Angels, and I told them the story. Like, I went to Mexico and we found this guy. And I beat him silly with my baseball bat. We dragged him out to the desert. We dug a shallow grave. We popped him in the head with the gun you gave us. We cut his mongrel, cut it off his back, which you're now holding. Here's the pictures of this crime scene with this mongrel, with his brains in the dirt and blood all around him. And that was ultimately the final push to where they said, at least the members in my charter, Skull Valley, said, hey, you know what, you've shown you got what it takes. You took care of business. Like, welcome to the gang. And they put Hells Angels patches on her back.
Wow. That's impressive, man. To even fathom and come up with the stories that you guys were doing as the street theater is impressive in general. Just to have that mindset.
It was so audacious. But the audacity came with great risk. We have to be perfect. We like on both sides of these street theaters, the people that are playing our adversaries or the people we're doing business with, they have to be as great or greater in believability than our undercover operators do. But the Columbine event, like literally that day when I arrived in Denver, in Littleton, man, I'll tell you, my DNA changed that day. Like I got really angry that day, and I had walked through that crime scene, and I had seen, these kids, dead on the floor and these massive pools of blood. But I'll tell you what really burned into my brain was a big bulk of the carnage took place in the library. But what really burned into my brain was the cafeteria. And Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, who were the Columbine shooters, they had a plan, an initial plan to incinerate their classmates. And there was these like propane tanks that were wrapped with pipe bombs. And they intentionally wanted to set off these IEDs, these destructive devices, and firebomb, their students and their peers, their classmates in the cafeteria. Like that didn't go off as according to plan. But when I walk through the cafeteria and I see these IEDs, these homemade explosive devices, the cafeteria was covered with back. It was, these kids were like shucking off their book bags. And I could only imagine the terror that they were experiencing with what was going on and how fast it was breaking bad and how unprepared they were and how fearful they had to be, like not knowing what to do or how to do it to escape that, to get out of that. Those kids came to school that day to do things that kids do in high school. They were going to go to class, and then they were going to go to their clubs or their sports teams practice afterwards, and they were going to like hang out with their classmates and the whole boy-girl thing of high school and the innocence of it. And I remember that day, like I said earlier, like I felt like my DNA changed that day. Like I had one goal, and it became to get next to bad people who were doing bad things to good people. That day I remember reading Psalm 23:4. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. And I was this is my responsibility. Not that event, not the Columbine High School event, but that environment, that world. Like I have a responsibility to see if I can do something about that. Like as we are hunting the violence, especially today, the violence is hunting us. And if you're not prepared mentally and emotionally and physically and spiritually to encounter violence, and then use an equal or greater amount of violence to contain that situation, man, it's a good day to find something else to do because it's out there, man. It's right around the corner. It's when you're pumping gas or you're putting your credit card in an ATM or you're coming out of a convenience store. It's everywhere. And so you have to be ready for it because you don't want to get surprised by violence. You almost like on the job, you have to expect it. You have to anticipate it.
Yeah. Yeah. You come up, as a cop, you come up with these weird ticks or clicks or like where you're, you operate in a specific way, even on and off the job. Almost to like the ultra vigilant where you pay attention. I pay attention to things and I'm not like super like where I, I don't know. But I'm very observant of the situation that I'm in, to the extent that, my wife will sometimes, call it out now. Like it's interesting to watch my wife as she's been with me. We've been married for 10 years, but now she'll start to see things as I'm seeing them, or even sometimes before, because it's almost like she's just been, she's learned through like osmosis of watching me.
We crossed paths with a guy named Jeffrey Tenpenny, who was intending to execute Oklahoma City Part 2. And he had involved us in a scheme where he was going to blow up the Treasure Island, the Mirage, and the Gold Nugget casinos, where we negotiated with him. We had an extended period of time with him. We bought dope from him. We bought guns from him. Once we gained his confidence and gained his trust, we ultimately reverse sold him some disguised C4 devices that he intended to detonate remotely in those casinos. And in those conversations, he's saying I don't care who dies. We're saying man, there's going to be babies in these casinos. There's going to be grandmas and grandpas in these casinos. Zero concern for what he was intending to try to pull off. There's no crystal ball for any of us. Like all the people out there in top line that are listening to this, there's no crystal ball that says what you do today, what it might prevent, or what it means tomorrow. We just go out and do the best we can on any given day, given the circumstances that are in front of us. But it's not hard to project if this guy had actually pulled this off, like what that would have been. Hundreds, if not thousands of people could have been chewed up in that plan. We were fortunate enough and skilled enough to get inside on it and disrupt it before he was able to pull it off.
That's crazy.
We ran a series of street theaters, which was very innovative. To give you kind of a thumbnail of that investigation, we first infiltrated a motorcycle gang in Tijuana, Mexico, known as the Solo Angels. And we infiltrated that gang specifically for street cred in the eyes of the Hells Angels. We didn't infiltrate the Solo Angels to investigate them. We wanted to wear their patch, and we wanted to be at least initially accepted into that subculture by the Hells Angels. So the first play of infiltrating one gang for the purposes of street cred with another gang, that really hadn't been done. That was a pretty audacious play. And then trying to stay ahead of the power curve, trying to stay ahead of the violence. We ran a series of street theaters. And street theater is defined as inaccurate conclusions based on accurate observation. So I would invite the Hells Angels to be a part of a drug deal or a gun deal or a debt collection, or we ran a chop shop, or all these crime events. And I would invite the Hells Angels to be part of that. So they would see these transactions, they would see these crimes, they would be physically present. They could see it and hear it and smell it and touch it. And they were seeing these street theater crimes. They were accurately deciding in their own mind, yeah, it was just part of the debt collection. This guy's a debt collector. I saw it, I lived it. What they didn't know is that those street theaters were hoaxes. They were skits. The people on the other side of those events were also undercover operators that had a role to play and a script to follow. So we routinely were convincing them that we were criminals, and we were showing them real time and involving them in real time criminal events. Here's the pictures of this crime scene with this Mongol with his brains in the dirt and blood all around him. And that was ultimately the final push to where they said, at least the members in my charter, Skull Valley, said, hey, you know what, you've shown you got what it takes. You took care of business. Like, welcome to the gang. You know, and they put Hells Angels patches on her back. And they kissed their families goodbye with no guarantee they ever get to come home and see their family. And this is why I have so much admiration for our community, is that men and women on the job, every day their alarm clock goes off. Day and night, they put their feet on the ground. You know, they pour a bowl of Cheerios for the kids and have a cup of coffee with their husband or their wife. And they kiss their families goodbye with no guarantee they ever get to come home and see their family again. But still they go, and they go to take the fence against the predators and the thugs out there, so that other people that they don't know, that don't respect them, that don't like them, that don't like the police, that want to defund them, that want to spit on them and assault them and shoot them and ambush them, they still go so that some family out there can have the guarantee of hugging their kids again and kissing their husband or wives again. It takes a special person to do that. And so, like, you know, we hear these complaints against the police, and hear like the defund argument, and you know, this vocal minority of how terrible we all are. And those people have no idea what it is that we stand for.
I have hope and aspirations that one day, with everyone having body cams now, that these people that are so anti-cop truly start to get a full perspective of what cops are dealing with on a day in and day out basis. So therefore, their perception, you could still hate them, but your perception now realizes the true reality of what they're dealing with. I don't think a lot of people really truly understand what cops are doing day in and day out and what they have to deal with.
You know, if you haven't done the job, really, how can you? If you climb the mountain and you're up there all by yourself, like who is there to celebrate with? You want to celebrate with your team. You want to celebrate with your partners when something goes well or when you succeed.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's true. That's usually a question I ask when someone has played college or high school sports, about the camaraderie aspect of it. And I also feel like when you're playing team sports, you can rely on other people too in situations that you need it. And I feel like that transitions really well to law enforcement, where you know that you're going to need someone's help eventually.
There's a hero in my story.
To flip the script a little bit, how are you handling home life during this time with wife and kids and everything?
You know, that's such a good question. It's such an important question for your audience. And like, if I'm gonna tell you the glory stories, and if I'm gonna tell you the I Love Me hero stories and the street theater stories, and about, you know, the Vegas bombing and Columbine and all that stuff, I've also got to be transparent and honest with you to answer that question, and tell you the horror stories. So, like, I was terrible at home. I was a terrible husband. I was a terrible father. I was selfish. I was making decisions for me, about my career, things that I wanted to do. I wasn't considering how those things impacted my family. And ultimately, that's the greatest regret I have, not just professionally, but in life, is that, you know, my wife and my kids, the people that loved me the most, the people that had blind loyalty and support for me, I treated the shittiest. There's a hero in my story. I've walked beside heroes. I know what a hero looks like. I know how a hero acts. There's a hero in my story, and it's surely not me. The hero of my story is my wife, because like what I put her through, and the drama and trauma that I brought into her life, um, she held strong, and she shouldn't have. She had, lots and lots of reasons to cut me loose, and no one would have blamed her for it. When someone succeeded, you didn't see jealousy. You saw people trying to elevate their game to keep up. And every time someone climbed a new rung on the ladder, everybody else was trying to get there. But it wasn't with animosity. It was with that challenge of all of us, individually and collectively, trying to be the best that we could. When I like moving back to that Waco story, when I got out there, I was on security, a protection detail for some of our guys that were in the hospital. We got some guys that were pretty chewed up. And I got specifically assigned to an agent named Kenny King, who Kenny was part of he was on the point of one of the assault teams and actually was shot and fell inside the compound. And so this gun battle and bomb battle is going on outside. And Kenny is shot to shit, dying inside the compound, where they had to negotiate. The agents that were there on scene had to negotiate with the Branch Davidians, with David Koresh, to come in and get their guy. So Kenny comes out. He's in the hospital. I get there. I get assigned to Kenny. He's a mess. When I walked in his hospital room, I had to look twice at him. I'm like, is he alive? He looked dead. He had that gray, green skin. He was shot to shit. And like there was an extended period of time where we didn't know if Kenny was going to make it, if he was going to be another fatality of that event. His hands and his wrists were shot up. He had through and throughs all over his body. And the great story, the inspiring story about Kenny King is that, like we said, we didn't know if he was going to live or die, let alone like be effective on the job ever again. He ended up, going to our academy, and they do a rope climb. And Kenny ultimately got to the point where he climbed that rope and could ring that bell at the top rafter. And I was just so proud of him. And so, like I didn't have anything to do with his recovery. I was just there to support him and try to keep him safe while he was in the hospital. But the fact that he came back from that devastation and being that chewed up, and he just set an example for all of us, young and old, on the agency. Like don't give up, don't quit, don't give in, fight back, push back. I love that I got to touch a very small part of his story. Well, like for me personally, when I got sworn in, when I got issued my badge and my gun, from the very first day, from the very first moment, like I took that so serious that it was an honor for me to be asked to stand up against the predators in the communities that I worked in on behalf of the good and innocent people that either couldn't or wouldn't stand up for themselves.
We end every podcast with one question. We teach for a company called Justice Academy. What is your definition of justice?
My definition of justice is that justice, and this is off the top of my head, right? I think justice is the exposure of the truth. And the truth is the truth is the truth. And the truth, whatever it is we're talking about, whether we're talking about Jay Dobyns, we're talking about investigations, we're talking about life events, the truth is the truth today, and it'll be the truth a million years from today. The truth doesn't change. And so when we work to expose and reveal the truth, we're doing justice to whatever it is that we're giving.